Hear me now? Yeah. Great. Well, I'm one of those short people which they suffer from this exposure. So I'm like, hide behind the laptop every now and then so you can hear me. But first of all, I wanted to thank you all for being here and for the organizers, especially Dr. Marshall and Dr. Turin, Ethan, and also all the students who are helping us and they magically appear by our side whenever we need something, like magical fairies. Thank you so much for being such wonderful hosts. Thank you. It's quite ironic, this is a design problem, and I am a designer. um, as Madayo Kahle introduced me, I'm a designer and educator. I am from Schumacher College. I have played a few roles there as a senior lecturer, program lead, head of research, and leadership. I'm also very privileged to work closely with Satish Kumar and Madayo as the director of Satish Kumar Foundation. And today I'm going to talk about Schumacher College Institute. You have heard eloquently about it from Satish. I add a few more. I want to talk about education, especially at this age. We talk about AI a few times, and I will also talk about AI as well as a provocation. I also want to talk about the system of education, which is exactly the opposite to AI. And then in the third part of my presentation, I will talk about Schumacher College, how these are related to that. I am not an AI scholar, but I do use AI. And especially in my role as a director of a startup, I need to actually play a few roles in a day. Sometimes I need to be an IT expert, just learning, teaching myself how to move one website domain to another one. And then an hour later, I need to learn how to develop an employee contract. So AI is a very useful tool. Show of hands, student, who in this room doesn't use AI? Why not? It's a great tool. It really helps with administrative efficiency, it personalized learning experiences, it gives wider access to expertise. Some would say that it democratizes knowledge. It potentially enhances creativity, debatable. It gives stronger decision making support to data analysis. It's definitely a new tool for scientific discovery and problem solving. There's opportunity to reduce repetition or prevent risky situations. It also creates a more equitable space for neurodiverse individuals in education and work life. I was listening to this interview with a man in his 50s, and he was very emotional when he was talking about AI. He was saying that he had a very severe ADHD and dyslexia. And he was very emotional. He was saying that this is the first time in my life that I feel I can communicate coherently. And so there is this argument about usefulness of AI. And so the question is, does AI pave the way towards a safer, more democratic, and more equal world? And then there is another side of the argument. We know that AI compromises critical thinking and creativity. It undermines the value of human memory, intellect, and our own creativity. It transfers trust from human to algorithm. This is horrible. We place in trust, which is the foundation of human societies, on machine. There is always a question of concentration of power in hands of those who own or shape the algorithm. It raises the problem of inequality between those who have access to AI and those who don't. There's obviously an environmental cost of energy-intensive AI system, which we don't talk much about. It displaces and removes jobs and livelihood, especially for vulnerable people and vulnerable parts of the society. And also, it gives rise to the growing disconnection between lived experience and material. Let's not forget, AI is not just a tool. AI is an agent, and you will have learned to remind us. We have created an agent more clever than us. And so the pressing question is, will AI reduce populations to puppets of powerful corporates and governments, or even worse, the machine itself? Also, please don't worry about the text on the screen. The text is really just to lead you to the pictures. And the pictures are providing glimpses into type of learning at Schumacher College. As an educator, I think the biggest risk of AI is removing the process, erasing the space in between intention and results. Just enter your intention and what you cultivate as a result, and nothing else in between. What happens in between is magic. And it might be okay if you're making a legal argument, if you're not a legal expert and want to make a court case, don't want to pay lawyers, great. You can develop a legal arguments for free, and who cares about the process? But in education, that lack of process is a disaster, because learning happens in this process, in this space in between. And what's happening in between is the exploration and questioning, asking why and how, challenging assumptions, and considering multiple perspectives. It's the space where struggles happen, frictions happen, the sitting with discomfort of uncertainty happens, and then the gradual refining of solution and ideas. This is the space where seemingly irrelevant ideas come together and create a whole new field of discovery. And this is the space where metacognition happens, thinking about how we think and evaluating the soundness of our reason. And finally, this is the embodiment stage, grounding learning in hands-on practice, in dialogue and lived experience, not just abstract reasoning. The fact of our life is uncertainty, and we crave certainty. The fact of our life is change, movement, and we long for arriving. From Carla Liederman. So what to do? We don't know. But directly facts. We cannot exclude artificial intelligence from education. We cannot ban it. It's impossible. We cannot ignore AI and just carry on with the old system. We know that higher education is facing a serious crisis, especially in the UK. I don't know how it is here. But in the UK, younger people are turning their back to higher education. They simply don't see how this education could prepare them to the complexity of the world they are living in. Education is not compatible with the complexity of the world. And we all heard about the state of the world. We have already crossed 7 out of 9 planetary boundaries and everything else that we know already. So the time to act is now, and it needs to start from education. I have been looking at sources for inspiration, and I forgot to say that I actually have a craft background. I was a silver smith, and I did large part of my PhD on craftsmanship. And craftsmanship, the story of craftsman, the journey of craftsman, is exactly the opposite of AI. It is a process-centered learning education, and it provides a rich source of inspiration. Inspiration. I'm not suggesting to go back to it. I'm suggesting to get inspired by it. Um, I have looked at different craftsmanship traditions in different parts of the world, from Iran, which is my own birth country, to the UK, which is my current home, also Germany and Far East China. And the story of craftsmanship is more or less similar in all those countries. Always have these three stages of apprenticeship, journeyman, and mastery. This is a type of education that cultivates wisdom, not just knowledge. It's a kind of knowledge about having new eyes rather than looking for a new territory. So I'll talk briefly about each of these stages. Apprenticeship, the dictionary definition, is the transfer of knowledge from a skilled practitioner to a learner. But in past traditions, the apprentice entered into a living relationship with the master, with the craft, and with a particular way of life. It's the kind of knowledge that is absorbed through observation, imitation, and participation in the whole dynamic, not just learning facts. It's not about receiving instruction. There was always a strong leadership presence with the master in this type of relationship. There's a full body presence, full mind and body presence in the environment. It cultivated patience, respect, and humility. Again, not just about knowledge or skill, it's about the manner and behavior as much as about skill. And in all those traditions, apprenticeship was integrated with morality, spirituality, and the presence of divine. I thought this quote from Nasseri, who was my teacher, captured beautifully. Apprenticeship is not merely a matter of learning how to carve a stick out of the woods, but it's a matter of learning to see the carving as a pathway to conjoin the wood and let the self and the wood flow into each other's being. It means that as an apprentice, your hands are not solely forming material, but also forming your mind. This process of forming and being formed continues to the extent that your transformed mind and wisdom, rather than drives of society, becomes your guide in your life. The workshop, the Master's Workshop, provides a very safe and secure home for the apprentice. But the apprentice needs to live and provide rules of the workshop, the rules of the master. So the apprentice may in fact develop this longing for freedom. After 7 years, at least 7 years, when the master feels that the apprentice is standing on the threshold of generously giving and openly receiving, they'll send them off into the journey, and then the journey person stays with. This is a stage of humility and authority. self-reliance, trustworthiness, and leadership. This is the stage when the apprentice, now a journey person, moves from one craft field to another, learn from them, and provide his skills and services to them. So through this process, they learn to dialogue with others. The apprenticeship was more about learning to dialogue with the material. This stage is about dialoguing with people and arts rather than actively win. By being exposed to different ideas, different environments, they practice resilience, critical thinking, and discernment. But there's also sorrow in the story of journeyman. While feeling free, they are also homeless. They experience a sense of loss, so grief and loss is part of this process as well. They are still longing for that security and home, and that longing keeps them going. After these 2 years of being a journeyman, in one of the hills that stop by, the master, when they recognize that the journeyman is ready to become a master, they sign a certificate. But it's only then that the master realizes, the new master realizes, this is a never-ending story. This mastery is not a destination, it's a lifelong journey that is not defined by skills, belonging, or recognition. It arises from a deep understanding that knowledge is never fixed, and that we are all part of an ever-changing world which can never be truly known. No knowledge can be truly mastered. The master simultaneously resides in a state of authentic self and being one with the whole. From this place, he or she is ready for the responsibility of carrying the light and guiding others as they seek their own path of becoming. I added really points here. Yesterday I was clever, so I wanted to change the world. Today I'm wise, so I'm changing myself, which is related to this one. The story of craftsman, the journey of craftsman, fits well with the spiral of growth. This circle is inspired by Robert Higginson's evolutionary psychologist and also applies to the story of any type of learning, any type of development, which basically says we are all embedded in different cultures, more than one cultures. When we move to a new culture, we feel unsettled because our inner world and the world that we are entering into are not aligned. In longing equilibrium, there are two ways. One is changing the internal world, and one is changing the external world. I would say the modern education is too quick to change the external world and ignore the internal world. Whereas the role of the classroom is giving time to get to know the external world and what needs to change internally to align with it. It's not about not making any change to the external world. Of course, our craftsmen have the skills, but offering the skills only as a service for what is missing, rather than imposing something new. So that brings me to the third part of this presentation, which is Schumacher College. Schumacher College was founded in 1991 by Satish, the handsome Satish there and the couple. It was meant to be the new vision for Dartmouth, founded on ecological and spiritual values. It was the meeting point of East and the West, bringing the idea of ashram from the East and university from the West together. Since the beginning, Schumacher College was the leading edge teachers and thinkers to the college. People like beloved Gary Odell, Joanna Acey, who also recently passed, James Lovelock, Chilean economist, Andrew Macksmith, Kate Raworth, Hercules, the Journal of Economics, and many others. Schumacher provided that space for people whose idea were ahead of the time, and continue to do that. The four pillars of learning at Schumacher's were these four. Ecology, which is not just about studying natural being in their environment, but a deep appreciation that the planet is a living being, living and conscious being, and our consciousness is part of the consciousness of that whole. So ecology at Schumacher College is inherently spiritual. Community, and a strong sense of community. And unity is held together by joining the community service. So no matter if you're a staff, volunteer, or student, everyone joins cooking and cleaning and working on the land. Our pedagogy is, as Satish described, the pedagogy of head and heart, learning with not just the cognitive intellect, but also emotional intellect, and also and your pillar is connection to the place, connection to the land, care for the place. Not necessarily Philippines, which is Schumacher College, but any place that we know. Beyond knowledge, there is so much that is happening at Schumacher. As our great teacher Amy Littler says, education should draw something out of the student rather than simply push information in. And this is what Schumacher provides for a student. This is the space for unmask and heal the individual. Create a safe space to rediscover and embody the authentic self. Some people say Schumacher is a bubble. Well, yes, it is a bubble, but not in that sense. Schumacher provides this invisible room where student and participant could be their real self, their authentic self, without fear of being judged. It enables people to reclaim their imagination and uniqueness, bring balance back to their quality of attention, or balancing the left or right hemisphere. It's practicing care and humility by serving others in the community and the place itself. As I said, Schumacher was established in 1991. Mostly short courses from a week to 5 weeks. Before 2000, the first postgraduate program, Holistic Science, was launched. Holistic Science is the study of natural being in connection with the rest of being, rather than as isolated parts. In 2011, the second postgraduate program, Economics of Transition, which then later changed name to Regenerative Economics, was launched. It's the ways in which economics could be regenerating nature rather than extracting from it. In 2014, MA Ecological Design Thinking was launched, which is aligning social system with human-made system with natural system. So rather than extracting from natural system, we can work with nature while also meeting human needs. In 2021, the college expanded. We had three more postgraduate programs, including regenerative farming, also a undergraduate and PhD. Unfortunately, in 2024, college came to a sudden halt as Dartington Hall Trust, the parent organization, went through serious financial challenges and they decided to close down the college. Of course, that was not the end, but the start of a new chapter for Schumacher College. A group of us, staff and the support of community we have from around the world, start this new chapter for college. We first launched the Satish Kumar Foundation with Satish's support and blessing, and then we started a nomadic presence. We thought that we need to go wild a bit. We are free from private station, and we are free from the very outdated economic system of Dartington Unit Trust. So we launched Schumacher Wild while we were in negotiation with Dartington Hall Trust to reclaim Schumacher College name. Through Schumacher Wild, we built a local and international partnership. We introduced radically interdisciplinary programs, and in the meantime, we also reclaimed Schumacher's name and assets in our rich library. And now we are going into a new phase of hopefully securing a new home for the college. We have started a fundraising campaign to buy a new land. What we learn from craftsmanship and how it is applied to Schumacher. As an institution, I would say we had 35 years of apprenticeship. We had security of having a home. We had to abide by the rules. We learned a lot from our leading edge teachers and thinkers. But for our students, we provide apprenticeship, which is the most foundational part of their journey. It's transformative in nature. The apprenticeship needs to be place-based. The student needs to be safe and grounded. In this case, we emphasize on creativity, embodied memory, embodiment generally. Students whether they're studying economics, design, or farming, they all go through this process of blending poetry, analogy, storytelling, and reopening the channels of communication with more than human words. After that stage, and this is the new part that we're adding, we'll spend a month to Germany, traveling and experiencing the projects and organizations in our network, so they can experiment with different perspectives and meet other ideas. This is not just for students, this is also help shaping a living network of holistic education and transformative practices around the world. And finally, when they have received that experience, we invite them to come back to the college and become fellows and support others and contribute to the learning of the college with their own experience. And this is how the college will always be relevant and connected to the rest of the world. This is a relational education that cultivates resilience, creativity, imagination, critical thinking, discernment, agency, and holistic view of life. Things that you can never learn from anyone. This is just display of our whole pedagogy, which I do not expect you to read. I just want to read core mission and core objectives. Our core mission is restoring relationship between the self, others, and nature. It's about how to resource the self, how to be human, how to live well together, and how to care for this place from ecosystem of Gaia. Our core objectives are life, purpose, thinking, life-aligned purpose, and life-enabling action. And our core aim is life-centered learning. If you want to know more about Schumacher College, please come talk to me. I will be very delighted to go through the whole experience. And that's it from me. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Professor K M Seethi. Dr. K M Seethi, professor at the School of International Relations and Politics at Plenary University. With over 3 decades of teaching and research experience, Dr. Seethi has held several key academic positions, including Director of the School of International Relations and Politics, Dean of the Faculty of Social Sciences, Director of Research at Mahatma Gandhi University. He currently chairs the Center of Cross-National Communications in South Asia and coordinates the KBS Mellon Chair for the Dramatic Studies. An eminent scholar in international relations, South Asian studies, and political theory, Dr. Seethi has presented papers at leading global institutions including the University of Cambridge, National University of Singapore, and University of Malaya, among others. He is also the editor of the South Asian Journal of Diplomacy and general editor of the Indian Journal of Politics and International Relations, with numerous publications, research projects, and contributions to national and international forums to this credit. He's going to speak about peaceful coexistence in the age of unrest, pathways to sustainable progressivity.
അപ്പം പത്തിച്ചാടും അപ്പുറത്തുള്ള ഷോട്ട് അടിക്കരുത്
വേറെ
കുറെ ഷോട്ട് ക്ലിയർ അറിയില്ല
for inviting me to this session, speak on a topic. I assure you that I don't have any power nor any uncomfortable points. We are not burdened with the PowerPoints. I'm sure that this Schumacher College is an embodiment of peaceful coexistence. When Dr. Naushad asked me to speak on this subject, I suddenly said sorry, but later on I found that this is an optional subjects which I cannot comfortably deal within a 30 minutes time. A few seconds ago, a few moments ago, I was just scrolling my mobile. I found a news item from BBC saying that the British Prime Minister has asked British students not to join any protest today with the Palestinians or anybody in the United Kingdom. Very uncomfortable statement from the Labour Prime Minister. Stammer. I start with that. Today is the second. I should not call it as an anniversary, but a very tragic incident which took place 2 years back in the Middle East. With the launching of attacks by Hamas, killing hundreds of people in Israel. The number could be anywhere between 1,000 or 2,000, 100,000 and 200. Taking hundreds of people as hostages. And what followed was a rain of death. It's nothing short of genocide. Like it gets underway. This is the second anniversary, you put it like that. Killing more than 16,000 people. It's not a small number. you have the history of
അങ്ങനെ എത്തിയില്ലല്ലോ.
Palestine. But also, nearly 1 lakh bombs have been dropped on a small strip of land in the Middle East, right? Place called Gaza. And in fact, I have been asking this question, primary question, whether a segment of the world population which has great credentials of peaceful coexistence until the 19th century, can't they live peacefully? This basic question anybody can ask, but the answer could be a problematic one for several reasons. A few weeks back, you may recall that nearly 4,400 scientists from 87 countries made an appeal, rather a very bold statement, asking Israel to stop this genocide without exonerating Hamas, pointing to the atrocities committed by the Hamas, without making any kind of a balanced reaction to any point. And I do agree with that, because the whole process of genocide started with the Hamas intruding into Israel and perpetrating this violence. Very ordinary people. Very ordinary people. And I had a kind of feeling that for every Israeli killed in Palestine, at least hundreds of ordinary Palestinians will have to pay a price, a huge price. I mean, that actually happens. That actually happens. And I don't consider this as just a battle between two peoples, between a state actor and a non-state actor, like Hamas. I would call it as a collapse of a trust, collapse of the norms of existence. And the remainder of that, we have forgotten how to coexist, how to live in peace. I'm very happy that out of the 4,400 scientists from 87 countries, there are more than 300 from India. It's quite a good number, but most of them are from well-known institutions like the Tata Institute of Fundamental Research, Indian Institute of Technology, Indian Institute of Science. And I haven't seen any names from any universities in this country. Universities in this country have been shut down, literally, I would say. Though Modi government hasn't asked the people of this country not to demonstrate or not to do this, you have an unofficial blackouts, and several universities are reluctant to conduct even a seminar on this. Totally afraid of. I should call it as a fear. And that's where that what I heard from Dr. Sadish Kumar's talk yesterday. Students should be taught first how to be courageous in life. The right side of the brain is dormant. It's not functioning all the time. I think for a long time, many students will be feeling that this right side of the brain is almost dead. Because we cannot be sensitive, we cannot be imaginative in any meaningful way. That's the sad story of our. No, if you have a very bad brain on the right side of your head, you may not be able to recognize the norms of coexistence, the norms of trusteeship, the norms of oneness, the norms of peace. You have only a mechanical part of your brain functioning in such a manner that you have the numbers, you have the figures, and everything you calculate, and you weigh the results in a very mechanical way. And I'm very unhappy that people and civil societies across the world are literally under siege. I'm not surprised rather when Trump tells the medical students not to protest. telling universities not to host any seminars. And if you do that, you will be deprived of your funding, federal funding. Any meaningful way. You have the person in the White House creating a new norm of existence. It's not a new norm of coexistence. He's creating and generating a kind of a terrain where norms of existence are dictated from a tenant in the White House. He's a crazy man. I think the American people have understood very clearly that they cannot run a country with this sort of idiosyncrasies all the time. So the basic question is, what are the reasons for this? And I would say that Professor Schumacher would agree with me that the power and self-help are the two important major enemies of peace. Power and self-help. We use to teach in international relations the norms of self-help as a typical realist paradigm. You don't have any liberal content in the self-help. You don't have to help others in any meaningful way. It's only self-help. And this neoliberal age promotes this self-help in meaningful ways. There is no sense of any collectivity, there is no sense of any collective action, there is a total absence of the social in the scheme of things. In a neoliberal age, atomization of our life, thinking of oneself, not of others. And that strikes at the root of the norms of peaceful coexistence, I would say. And Mahatma Gandhi was the first, I should say, who boldly said that this land, Palestine, belongs to the Palestinians. And Palestinians means they are Muslims, they are Jews, and they are Christians. It's a holy land of three religions, not of the three armies. He opposed partition. India opposed partition in that manner. For the simple reason that we too had a very uncomfortable time with the partitioning of our own self, the Indian self, in 1947. We had a kind of thinking that the partition would ultimately resolve the Hindu-Muslim question in India with the Pakistan about the idea that Muhammad Ali Jinnah put across was that Hindus and Muslims cannot live together. This is a kind of an artificial construct that he put across, and the Britishers had to accept it at some point of time. The norms of peaceful coexistence was undermined with the partition of the subcontinent. And what followed was that a kind of India partition. The partition of this subcontinent resulted in the partitioning of the minds of people in such a way that the post-partition days are nothing but days of peaceful, hostile coexistence between the country which thought that it would be a kind of a paradise for the Muslims of this country, Islamic State. You know what is happening in Pakistan is known to all. It's an anarchic belief state with no norms of democracy, no norms of life. People enjoying that. And I would say that along with all these things, I'm very happy that Dr. Satish Kumar has been a very the frontline champion of nuclear disarmament for these years. This is a very crucial question. I think it is in the context of, it was in the context of the emergence of nuclear bombs that the central law of peaceful coexistence came under challenge. Perhaps you know that the whole process started way back in 1939. Perhaps we may be quite uncomfortable in telling this today. In 1939, when Albert Einstein called him the man of peace, who authored a letter to then American President Franklin Roosevelt. You know what's that letter telling? He warned Roosevelt that Nazi Germany would build an atomic bomb soon. So the US must take the lead in preventing it. That letter gave birth to the Manhattan Project. And that Manhattan Project set the nuclear race and the nuclearization of international relations. And little did Einstein expect that it would lead to catastrophic results. But when Hiroshima and Nasseri were destroyed, Einstein was obviously shattered. I quote him: "The unleashed power of the atom has changed everything except our ways of understanding, our ways of thinking. It tells the truth." Then he became champion of disarmament after that. Ironically, he never asked Nasseri to renounce the weapons in American arsenal. This may appear to be very strange. Why is that Einstein has asked the American establishment to renounce the weapons? He didn't want to encourage the destruction of the system in place. And you know, a similar paradoxical statement came from a well-known mathematician turned philosopher, Bertrand Russell. You all call him as a great pacifist. I'm also a fan of Russell. And in the context of the Cold War, Russell argued that the threat of use of nuclear bombs could be justified to deter the Soviet Union. And later on, we had to regret this in his autobiography that he made such a kind of remark at a critical point in time. Just before the Soviet Union exploded its nuclear device, he made this statement as a deterrent. Russell had to make this statement. So only after Moscow built its own atomic bomb did he become a peace campaigner across this world, and he never detracted from that cause. So even scientists and philosophers were at some point of time not free from the logic of power operating or existing in a different way. You know the story of another scientist, Robert Oppenheimer, the father of the nuclear bomb. You would have seen the film. Many of you would have got excited after seeing this film. But there is another side of the story that when he saw the first bomb explode in the desert of New Mexico, the first experiment in 1945, before the Nasseri and Hiroshima experiment, he recited the Bhagavad Gita. Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds, and it can be interpreted, can be translated in different ways. Now I am the time of thinking. Oppenheimer used this particular words from Bhagavad Gita. You may wonder why is that he quoted from Bhagavad Gita. He was also learning Sanskrit in out of the university. He had a familiarity with Bhagavad Gita. He had a read it and he knew the sentences, verses like that. I don't know whether he deliberately quoted this or it was a spontaneous expression. Oppenheimer, he recognized that humanity had a destructive power comparable to the cosmic force described in the Gita. But you know,
and
after
the
he goes to Nagasaki, he
Nagasaki,
told President Truman, I have blood on my hands. You would have noticed this from the film, this particular moment. I have blood on my hands. You know what President said after he left from the room? He told his staff that don't let the cry baby back in here. That was the divide between power and conscience. No, Oppenheimer had a very troubled time after that. When he opposed the detonation of hydrogen bomb, the American administration again became suspect. Then they started digging into their history, and this general found that he had a communist background. He had a communist background. His wife had a communist background. His brother had a communist background. Naturally, he should be put on alert. In 1954, his security clearance was lifted. You know, when it was dropped, you have to wait until 2022. A film was getting prepared in the background of that. It took us such a long time to restore his position as a respectable scientist without any bad credentials. Till that time, he was listed as a suspect, a scientist being suspected because of his opposition to nuclear bombs being used against humanity. You know, there are several such ironies in history. You know, Buddha was the first among the earliest teachers to articulate the idea of peaceful coexistence in a clear, universal, and ethical way. And his teachings implied that all life is interconnected. A foundation for peaceful coexistence. Ironically, when India tested its first nuclear device in 1974, it was code name. What is that? Do you remember what was the code name for the first nuclear test? Anyone knows? Smiling Buddha. The officials declared that Buddha has a smile. You know the reason why? Because this was done on Buddha Purnima Day, the day of the enlightened one. And how we use our sacred text to establish our power of destruction from Oppenheimer to the Indian establishment. A very peculiar thing. And then Mrs. Gandhi called it as a peaceful nuclear explosion. It was a peaceful nuclear explosion. Many saw it as a hypocrisy. No less than a person like Guna Buddha call it as this is nothing but a science. You have nuclear technology, which means you can produce nuclear bomb also. So don't fool people around the world that you have done a peaceful explosion. So, what was that? Pakistan started its own program of nuclearization in the subcontinent. And the father of Pakistan's nuclear program, the political father, not the technical father, was Zulfikar Ali Bhutto. You know what he said about the mission of Pakistan? He said that the Christians have their bombs. He put it in a civilizational terms. The Christians have their bombs. The Jews have their bombs. Israel had already detonated in a very secretive way. Now the Hindus have their bombs. What do the Muslims want? So we need to have an Islamic war. Just imagine how culture, how religion, how sacred texts are being misused and abused to justify this power, the terror of destruction. And what I'm saying is that no, This is the problem of the power, the problem of the self-help. You don't have any particular kind of rationality for this. Nuclear weapons, wherever it is, whether it is in the hands of Trump, or it is in the hands of Modi, or in the hands of British Prime Minister. They are dangerous to the world. You know how many nuclear weapons are there in the world? There are more than 20,000 nuclear weapons are in the world, and 90% of them are in the hands of the United States and Russia. 90% of them are in the hands of Russia. And they have over the last 5 to 6 years abandoned all treaties that these two powers have signed over a period of time, including intermediate nuclear forces treaty, which means they have any time exercise their option vis-a-vis each other. This is a very dangerous goal, and they still take moral classes and lessons for others. Israel having nuclear weapons have not signed NPT telling that Iran is violating NPT. Iran is producing. This is the kind of hypocrisy of the first order, the result of any moral fight. Anyway, we have issues after issues to be discussed from level to level. And perhaps the first two day conferences in the late 19th century and early 20th century laid the foundation for peaceful coexistence. But it was after the laying of the foundation that the first World War. So conferences, treaties, or international law mean anything, mean nothing, unless the power of the powerful should be confronted in a very meaningful way. The first World War, we thought that the League of Nations will save the world. We all know what happened to League of Nations. It couldn't do anything. And in between, the idea of peaceful coexistence was prominently projected by a great statesman. I would call him as a great statesman like Lenin after the Russian Revolution. He was the first to declare in the midst of the First World War that we need a peaceful coexistence. Peaceful coexistence between capitalism and socialism. If you have a kind of an enemy surrounding your country, the long-term goals of socialism cannot be achieved in any way. So I would call it as a strategic position, not as a moralistic position. Lenin's position. And maybe a moralistic position, you can argue something later when his successor, not an immediate successor, successor in the 1950s, Nikita Khrushchev, put this idea in the 20th Congress after the de-Stalinization process. Peaceful coexistence between socialism and capitalism. For the simple reason that both socialism and capitalism have nuclear bombs. So let us not use these bombs against each other. That's the only idea that we have. But around the same time, India was one of the first countries on the global south which put across this idea of peaceful coexistence, and it was put into a treaty signed with China in 1954. 1954 Panchasheel Agreement. Reverberating the Buddhist idea or something like that. I think both China and India had reasons to say this Panchasheel. Of course, Nehru had to face a lot of opposition from his own colleagues like Ajay Tobalani, who call it as Panchasheel boring thing. For the simple reason that Tibet was not properly acknowledged in the scheme of things, allowing China to continue its domination. And Tibet, since then, has been a very sore point in India-China relations. The countries signed a peaceful coexistence Panchasheel agreement. In another 8 years' time, had to fight a major war. In 62, India lost the war. The simple reason that we never thought that China would do this. That's why the Guru said that in a major rally in Lucknow, he said that we are really getting out of touch with the reality. He stabbed in the back. And there were several reasons. I'm not going into details of all these things. Peaceful coexistence between the two great neighbors, the two largest populous countries in the world. We cannot ensure for the simple reason that their boundary is disputable, drawn by the British. If you cannot redraw the boundary and settle the issue, you are not human beings. But what came in the way was geopolitics, power, and self-help. Nothing else. Nothing else, and nothing less, and nothing more. That is the tragedy of our relationship with our neighboring countries. We also make a point that the best of peaceful coexistence is that whether you have the capability to maintain peaceful relations with your immediate neighbors. Isn't it? That is the logic of peaceful coexistence. Even if you are living in a particular locality, your relationship with your immediate neighbors should be the best test of your peaceful coexistence. You cannot say that we support the peaceful coexistence between United States and Soviet Union, United States and China, but you cannot do this in your own land, in your own continent. You cannot have peaceful coexistence with China, peaceful coexistence with Pakistan, peaceful coexistence with Sri Lanka, with the Maldives, with several countries at different points of time. We talk of high spirits, neighborhood first policy, and several other things. But the neighbors are not comfortable with India because of the kind of power structure that we have. It's not that India is going to. I haven't seen any instance when India has gone into another country and grabbed territory. We haven't done that. We don't have this. The only exception would be in 1971 in Pakistan, where we try to help the Mukti Bahini forces, not necessarily of grabbing the territory of Bangladesh. India has a distinct history of that, and in spite of all our criticisms leveled against Modi or Nehru or all other things, India hasn't done that. It's because of the logic of existence that we know within the country, as a mosaic of cultures. We all live together in such a manner that we couldn't go beyond a point in terms of partitioning of this country. The only partition that in 1947 was the disaster for the country, for the peoples of these two countries. So what I'm saying is that this ideal of peaceful coexistence has become a mere talking point, a mere what we call as a slogan, or as a I should call it as a footnote in the history of international law over a period of time. And with the Trump in power, the logic of existence is dictated by this unilateralism, abandoning all kinds of internationalism, multilateralism, dictating terms on peoples across the world. Trump doesn't see people living in other parts of the world have the same right to exercise the same kind of logic of protecting themselves from any kind of infiltration, atrocities, including into their economies like that. And Trump has created such a logic wherein the existence of the international system has been made a very difficult task for the I'm sure that many of you know that he's not alone in the business of things. He has a project of 2025 generated by the what is its foundation? There is a foundation which produced this project 2025 for Heritage Foundation. The Heritage Foundation's 2025 project, if you read it, it's about 900 or plus pages reports, where we go by chapter. In the first 2 months of time, Trump has almost adhered to the demands of this project, nearly 60%, according to the Times and also the Washington Post. Nearly 60% of the proposals from this project 2025, in 2 months' time, he did. And this is going to be a very dangerous project 2025 for the world. No, he doesn't accept that there is a climate crisis. He doesn't accept that there is an ecological crisis. He is against any greening project of this world. I'm sure that I can go on talking on these issues any forum in any number of occasions in any length of time, but there is no end in sight for this. The best answer for the crisis of our existence today is Schumacher. I was literally thrilled by your speech yesterday. Young intellectual of this particular age has the capacity and the courage to tell this world that you use your hands all the time instead of the left side of the brain with the two fingers all the time. I'm also an addict somehow. I'm also trying to escape from that. I cannot tell my next generation that you have to get escape from this trap. And this trap, I am sure that is going to be a very critical challenge for this. I am sure that the days ahead are not quite comfortable for us. There is going to be a very uncomfortable nuclear arms race in the Middle East in the coming days. Many countries are in the business of things. So the world will be more and more unstable. So I'm sure that there is a case for Schumacher College starting a program on peace and conflict studies. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And we have some time for questions. So maybe you sit down and sit there, both of you. Are there any questions?